Hello, folks. I am your host, Franco Vega, and I want to thank you for tuning into the RightWay podcast, where our theme is 10 minutes of healing the right way. On this program, we'll interview folks who have been through some pain, like my beautiful foster youth, and who have turned that pain into power. To learn more about our organization and our mission, please visit our website at therightwayfoundation.org. What's up, folks? We're live, the RightWay podcast, in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month. We are interviewing our Chief Operating Officer, who is also a licensed clinical social worker. To break it down for you common folks, she's a therapist. So welcome, Andraya.
Thank you, Franco.
All right, so in honor of Mental Health Awareness Month, let's talk about mental health services. How long have you been with the RightWay Foundation?
I have been with RightWay for almost 10 years now.
Almost 10 years, yeah. What year? We're in 2024. Yeah, so
yeah.
You're here around 2014.
The end of 2014,
okay,
yeah.
Awesome.
Yep.
So you solidified our mental health program. So what have you seen different since we started? You know, because we do things a lot different here at RightWay, especially when it comes to mental health services. So have you noticed anything different from us compared to other programs or providers?
Well, coming from other providers myself, I think what I noticed was the fact that it's less focused on numbers and less focus on the, not the documentation necessarily, but documentation and numbers and just like productivity, and it's more centered on building relationships with young people, which I always appreciated because I never really had that kind of time to spend with clients to get to know them in a way that I could build, trust and a meaningful relationship with them and work through, to unpack their stuff. So.
Okay, so prior to RightWay, you coming on board RightWay, you was delivering mental health services to transitional age young adults. What was that model? How were you delivering it there, and then compared to how are we delivering it here at RightWay?
Well, there, other places it's a really quick turnaround to get, diagnoses and to assess individuals, to build a treatment plan. And so a lot of the times it felt like that process was very forced and it threw a lot of people off. People tended to understand that, this was part of the process. But I think it put a lot of guard up.
Okay.
And the process here, I think because it's not so quickly paced, we're kind of meeting people. We are meeting people where they're at and allowing people to kind of lead and guide the process. So it doesn't feel like I'm trying to get a lot of information out of a person in a short period of time. It doesn't feel forced.
Okay.
It feels I can do things more organically, more naturally. Yeah.
Time frame. So I'm hearing that prior to RightWay, it was always a time frame.
Yeah.
And explain that.
Yeah. So usually how it would go is I'd have to turn in my assessments pretty quickly within a 2-week time frame, which was kind of difficult because I don't feel like I was getting to know people on a level that I could make, a complete diagnosis or just to get to know people. I don't think that was enough time for me to get to know their story or their narrative. It just, and it didn't, I don't think it was really helpful, but.
I always hear that time frame, especially with Department of Mental Health, which is part of the County of Los Angeles, which really delivers mental health services to our youth, or they hold the pockets or the purse, they hold the bag. They have time frames on that services, correct? Is it, let's say we're providing service to Hector, and Hector, we don't build that relationship right away, and Hector disappears. What's that look like? And then Hector comes back.
I think depending on the organization, depending on the agency, there's a relatively quick termination time frame. So if you don't see participants, and I think for some it's 60 days, some for 90 days, you're going to terminate services, assuming that you have attempted, you've done your due diligence to try to contact clients or participants. Assuming you've done that, then if you don't hear from them, if you don't make contact with them, you do have to terminate services.
So let's say we have a youth who enrolls in our program. We start something off. They get a job. They're doing great. 93 days. We haven't talked to them. Say we're the county. That means we close their case. They come back in looking for services. And they got to go through the whole process again.
Yeah, exactly. So they'll have to kind of rehash that story, right? And might have to.
And probably with a different person.
Probably with a different therapist. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, we got to do better for Mental Health Awareness Month. That's why we have this interview today, because we got to educate folks. You know, it's just this mental health system is broken, along with the Department of Children and Family Services foster care system. That's broken also. So how do you like it? What does a successful youth look like after they deal with our mental health program? Without mentioning their names, kind of those confidentiality, but what progress have you seen by our model?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said about longevity, and we don't, as you know, we don't have a time frame. We don't terminate clients after a certain time, and I think that's been really helpful, because sometimes it takes years to build a relationship.
Correct.
And when you're building relationships with people, that's when I think that's when progress starts to happen, because they are trusting, in what you're saying. They're trusting that you're guiding them through that process. And I think, obviously that's when you see progress, but I think progress is obviously different for everybody. Anytime I see people who are, just experiencing less of the, behaviors or the thoughts or any of the things that they've come to us presenting with. Anytime I see less of that, then I think that's absolutely progress, right? Okay. It's not going to happen overnight. It might not happen in a couple of years. We talk about trauma a lot, and, that can be sometimes a lifelong process of healing. And so, I think just, any progress in terms of like how they see themselves, awesome. And how they view the world, I think that's, pretty significant.
Okay. Here's another question. How long can you stay in a traditional departmental health program to receive therapy? Is it a time frame?
There are time frames. It will depend, I think, on the program, right? And I've been out of that kind of department mental health game for a while. So I think things might have changed, but, my experience too, I know there are time limits, and that's pretty counter to what we try to do here. From what I've been told by our participants, being forced into therapy when they were younger, that kind of made the process of seeking therapy as young adults kind of difficult, and kind of they were reluctant to engage in that process. And so I think that not having time frames has been helpful in engaging people and building trust with people in that way, because their experience, especially being in the system and having to seek out therapy and being forced to be in therapy, was so different.
Correct. Have you got any feedback from our youth comparing our model of therapy to the ones that they endured while they are growing up in group homes and such things like that?
Yeah, I have. I think the fact that, we're when we say, therapists aren't supposed to come into the space being judgmental. And I think that hasn't always, that hasn't historically happened. At least that's what I've heard is, I was thinking I can come into a space and trust the therapist, but then I come to find out, and I'm talking from the perspective of a participant, I come to find out that my therapist has told my social worker and my foster parent and, et cetera, et cetera. And I thought all this stuff was supposed to be confidential. So, next sessions I've had, I just completely shut down. And how beneficial is that to a participant, right? You're not getting anything out of it. But so, we kind of had a lot of work to do at RightWay when we're proposing mental health services to young people who've had that kind of experience. We had to do a lot of trust building, right? Relationship building. And I think the only way that you can do that is spending as much time as you can with the person.
Correct. Okay. Well, we want to wrap it up, but in honor of Mental Health Service Month, What are you guys doing outside just Right Way as far as partnering and other services? Because I know our goal at Right Way is to share this information. We don't want to keep the secret sauce. So and educate the audience on what we're doing with Right Way as far as to partnering with other folks and providing training and also stuff like things like that.
Yeah, so we developed an 8-hour trauma-informed and healing-centered training for both employer partners. So anyone who is interested in hiring young adults, we will provide training on, how to create trauma-informed and healing-centered workplaces, and building out that culture. And then we also train community-based organizations, nonprofits, other partners that serve young people on our trauma-informed and healing-centered best practices. Again, in an effort to build that, healing-centered work or culture to serve youth or young people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I want to thank you for your time, Andrea. Is there anything you'd like to share with the audience before we let you go?
No, I just am happy Mental Health Awareness Month, and I hope everyone has an opportunity to take care of themselves.
All right, Andrea, can you give a tip of what is that, self-care, or how can we take care of ourselves?
How to take care of ourselves. I think, man, there are so many out there, but I think, again, it's what works for you. Do your research to figure out what that might be. But I think something that I like to do in the morning is just express gratitude. Express gratitude that I'm here. I'm alive. My heart is beating. I can breathe. I can appreciate and express gratitude for the beauty I see. Even when things aren't going exactly as I'd like them to be, or things are stressful, I just kind of remind myself of things to be grateful for.
Awesome. Great tip. Thank you for dropping some jewels for our audience. Please tune in next week. We have another lovely guest. I want to say peace and God bless. Thank you for tuning into the Right Way podcast, and we invite you to come back every week. Read more about us and our mission at therightwayfoundation.org.